go? We're live?
You're live.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the New York State ReLeaf little webinar about protecting your plants and shrubs, trees and shrubs for the winter season. We're here at Aspinall Nursery. We're here with Daryl Tuttle, who works for Aspinall. He is a lifetime certified landscape and nursery professional. Is that correct? All right. And then we're also here with Andy Bowler, who is a DEC forester with Region 7. Yeah, okay. So we're here, we're gonna talk about getting ready for the winter, getting your trees ready for the winter, and then we're gonna open it up for a little question and answer towards the end. So if you have any questions, make sure you type them in the chat box. We'll read them out to Dale here, who's gonna walk through a couple different things with us. So we'll get started.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day today, but winter's coming. It'll be here soon enough, and Dale has just got so much knowledge on when you have these plantings around your house, your neighborhood, and you want to protect them. There's all kinds of things with the cold weather, with heavy snowfalls, different things with rodents and other animals that may impact them. But we're just talking to Dale about what advice we can provide to you as far as what you want to do to prepare at this time of year and throughout the winter to protect those plants. And one of the important things, Dale, that you and I talked about is the importance of hydration. That people lose track of when you water your plants in the summer, but you don't really think about that during the upcoming winter season and just how important that is.
Yes, you know, and it's hard to say because we had almost 5 inches of rain this past week, but their plants are still in need, but there's no real magical amount that you should be looking at watering every day or back off the watering because of that. You really want to check the soil, and checking the soil, we recommend sticking your finger down in the soil about 3 inches if it's a new planting next to where the container or root ball was to feel if it's dry. You know, you can also use a moisture meter, which will give you just a rough idea, is there moisture in the ground. When we get into new plantings, such as with this Norway spruce behind us, that root ball on this 6-foot tree is 24 inches wide. That plant itself is almost like having shingles over it, so it's going to shed the water. You really need to get the water inside there to check it. And there's a number of different ways of doing it. I didn't bring a sample up, but there are products with Tree Gator that are water bags that will help, or even just taking a hose and let it dribble on that. Even for existing plants, it's good to keep an eye on that because every site has different conditions. We in Central New York have a lot of heavy soils, but there are some areas where soil has been amended and it may be more of a loam or sand that's going to drain, or they're in those heavier soils, there's been mechanical drainage put in, which is going to help take that water away. So more than anything, just checking. Winter burn is a really bad problem, and primarily for evergreens, but it does hit deciduous. That if a plant goes into the winter where the soil is dry, next spring, as that air starts to warm and the temperature starts to warm, the stomates or pores in the needles open up and release the moisture. If there's nothing in the ground to replace that, that's where burn comes. That can also affect deciduous plants that have those stomates or pores along the branches.
So you want to be concerned about watering right up until the time where you get freezing conditions, right?
Where we know that it's going to turn for that one last time. And again, especially on those new plantings with the evergreens, to make sure you do it. You know, there are some things that you can do in addition to the watering. There's a product called Wilt Proof, which is an anti-transparent, which this is actually a waxy substance that you spray on the plant, and it plugs the stomates to in a sense, reduce the amount of transpiration you get through the plant. The negative is if we get a lot of wet snow or rain, it will wash that off, and you may need to apply it. And like with any chemical or anything you can apply, you want to read the label and you want to follow it. And if you're going to hire it done, you want to make sure that it's a DEC licensed or certified applicator doing it. So.
As far as once you get the plant watered and everything, is there any concern for adding mulch around it to hold that? Does that help at all?
Mulch is a great additive for that. That does help retain the moisture, and also, even now, we're going to get weed growth. it does help suppress that, and those weeds actually compete not only for the moisture as well as the nutrients out of the plant.
Yeah, I had a question. So if I planted a new tree, like a deciduous tree, and the leaves are gone, should I still be watering it?
Yes. You want to make sure that soil is, and you can back up it. There again, you want to check that to see if does it need it, but especially when you know that it's going for that last time.
So even if it's a deciduous tree that's dropped its leaves.
The soil temperatures are still warm enough that you will get some root development.
Okay.
Excellent. So some of the other things that we wanted to talk about was, we're all worried about deer. Deer are everywhere, but there's some other animals that will affect trees, and how can we protect them, especially coming into winter? During the summer and spring, those animals can feed on foliage, but that starts to drop off, and they may find plants closer to the house more attractive at that time.
So the best protection is some type of a mechanical barrier, which can be done with this calorie repair, the tree guard, which that only has like a 1/2 inch opening on it, but it does allow air to go through it. That will prevent voles, moles, rabbits, and chipmunks from being able to girdle the base. It also does prevent bucks from rubbing the actual trunk up. The tree protection like that is vital, especially on some of the softer bark materials like this apple tree or a tree hydrangea. That's a perfect thing for a rabbit or a vole or mole. They'll actually eat the bark all the way around, thus killing the plant. There are other types of protection, like you can tie plants up for the winter, like this grass. There is no right or wrong. Some people will cut them down in the fall, but they actually do look nice tied up with the snow hanging on them for the winter. Plus, it does make it much easier when you want to cut it next spring. It's all tied up for you. I have tied this one arborvitae up with twine, and that does help it. If, in fact, you've got areas where you may get snow load coming down over the top, there are also some other mechanical barriers like this shrub coat, or even using burlap.
The idea is that use it like a tent over top of the shrub.
So anytime you can do a physical barrier is going to be a better protection for it. But you also want to make sure on those physical barriers, and they can be something like this. You can make them out of a teepee, out of a wood structure. That does also allow a nice spot inside for the rodents to live. That even if you wrap that with burlap to prevent them from getting in, or some type of a fencing or deer net.
You have mentioned some other products here for repelling deer.
There are some different sprays involved. This is liquid fence. This is also a good repellent that we've had. These are actually garlic sticks that clip onto the plant, and you open it up and it garlic through it. We have had good luck with these. The negative is this material, any type of application can wear off with rain or snow, that you may have to reapply. And if it does become between life and death with the animal, they're going to usually eat through that. There are some other organic methods that have been used. Human hair is one that people will go to a salon and get that and put it in pantyhose. They had an old-time nurseryman told me about using Sweetheart soap, the little hotel bars, and hang it on the trees with a paper clip. Again, it'll do some help, but in areas like this where the deer population is really hard, you are really best with some type of a mechanical barrier, and then also choosing a plant that is a little bit more resistant than others.
Excellent. Very good. I don't know if we have any questions coming in on.
Yeah, so we don't have any questions. I have a question about, because you mentioned this kind of mesh tree guard.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people use those drain pipes before.
They have used it.
Yeah, okay.
The negative that you get with that is, one, it will serve that purpose. It'll protect the bark. But it also is a perfect breeding ground for insects and other types of things if they get inside that.
Because there's no airflow?
Yes. It also can build up heat. There are some people that use black. and that's really not a good thing to use. Again, we've had really good luck with these because it does allow that airflow to go through it.
Yeah.
But it truly does protect the bark.
Okay. So those will still work, they just might not be.
Yes. If in fact you do use these, you want to make sure that you don't leave it on all season.
Right.
That you get it, take it off, and
Maybe poke some holes in it.
Yeah, this does actually have some holes as a drainage pipe, but it still can build up that heat. But I would say once things come out of dormancy in the spring, take them off. I mean, these, you have a little bit more leeway with that.
Right.
We generally see the bucks doing most of their damage from about a month ago up through now.
And when you say that, you mean them rubbing their antlers?
Their antlers on the bark.
Okay.
Prior to that, the younger ones actually will just work on eating the branches or snapping.
Okay.
Gail, are you concerned at all about fertilizing plants before winter? Is that something that people should think about?
You do need to be really careful with that. We're at a kind of an in-between time that you don't want to fertilize heavy enough that you're going to push that plant back into growth. Right now, they're all getting ready to go into dormancy. If you do anything, something mild, and even at a lower rate, like a miracle grow, if you're watering anyways, or a water soluble, I just would be really hesitant on pushing growth at this time.
One of the things that people have mentioned before, and I don't know how common it is, but a condition they refer to as frost crack in the bark of trees. Are there certain trees that are susceptible to that, or what would you?
Yep, there are some trees that have a thinner skin to them. Some of them have somewhat gone out of favor. Mountain ash is one that has a very thin bark. That we've seen that before. There are a couple of the maple species that seem to be a little bit more susceptible than others to that. There's some different protections you can do with that. One, the hydration does help. Secondly, on a newly planted tree, there is a craft tree wrap that can be put on for that first year. That actually does a lot of what the anti-transparent, the wilt-proof does with it. Reduces the amount of transpiration through the bark. Plus, it also protects it from that winter sun. Usually, after the first year, the plant is acclimated to its new setting.
We do have a question from one of our viewers. Jennifer Ryan asks, are there any types of landscape plants you would recommend planting at this time of year?
You can plant anything at this point. Where we get into fall risk materials is actually them being dug or transplanted at this time. There's a certain group of trees, oaks, birch, and cherries, that should only be dug in the spring, because when you dig them in the fall, they don't have enough time to go through the whole transplant shop. But you're really safe to plant anything that's above ground, really right up until the ground freezes. And as long as you give it that extra care.
Great, thank you, Dale.
I have a question. If let's say I have something like I have a potted boxwood, something that's too big, I don't really want to bring it inside, but I don't want to leave it on my deck over the winter. Is there anything I can do to protect that?
You're really taking a risk with that. We get that question all the time. What can I put in a pot?
Right.
The soil is a great insulator.
Right.
When it's planted down low, either the snow or the soil is protecting that. When you put that plant up in a pot, there's no protection. You're almost making that plant 2 zones warmer of it being hardy for this area. And I think in our area, you're really taking a risk with that. Right. And if somebody wants to do it, we usually tell them it's an annual.
Okay. So even if I wanted to take mulch or wood chips and kind of heal it in,
that won't hurt. But if you go to that, you may want to put it right in even the pot and all in the ground.
Okay.
As a protector.
Okay, that's good. That's interesting.
I see a roll of burlap back here. I don't think we talked about it.
That can be done also as a mechanical build. And it can be a couple things. It can be for deer, and also when you get into some of the newer plantings, say for instance a hedge of junipers or arborvitae, you can wrap that plant, which will protect it from windburn.
I see a lot of people will do that on the arborvitae.
Yeah.
deal of it so much.
So if we do wrap, what time of year and like when in the spring is it safe to remove that?
All weather related. It would be tough to say that we want to make sure that we're past the temperatures that we've seen in the past 8 weeks or 2 weeks, because that plant's still actively growing and that can build up some heat. So wait until we know it's cooling down and we're on that downhill slide. And then in the spring, it's really watching for the same thing. Is once that weather, the air temperatures start to warm, that we get it off before we have consistent, say, 70-degree temperatures, which can also build up that heat. We did talk about tying the plants up too. There's a couple different options of using that. I think this one I used jute. There is also nylon. If you do use anything like the nylon, you've got to make sure that you get that cut off in the spring, because if it ends up that you
kind of
leave
pull
a
the
knot
branches up
along the branch, that can girdle it.
It's kind of like just wrapping a
Yes, it's a
spiral
spiral.
around it. Yeah. Easy enough. And you don't have to. You can use pretty much any kind of twine or something.
This is this one we use a lot because it won't break down.
Yeah.
But you've got to make sure that you get all the pieces and where you've tied it.
So it won't girdle the tree.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because if you tie on one of the lower branches and that knot stays in there,
Yeah.
it can then choke out that branch.
Okay. And at least this stuff, if you really want to, you could reuse it.
Yes.
Too.
Yep. And burlap's the same way. If you can get it in, dry it,
Yep.
you can probably get a few years out of it.
And I guess one of the other questions I thought of, which is kind of a reach, I'm sorry to hit you out of left field with it. Do I have to rake up, like if my plant's dropping something?
Well, we haven't touched on that. There are some, this past year, every year we go through challenges. This year with the amount of water, there was a lot of fungus. Tar spot on maples, apple scab on any type of apple or crab apple. It is really important once those leaves drop to try and pick them up and remove them from the site.
Yeah.
Because that fungus can stay in there into the soil and be back next year. And it was that heavy this year, and you have a tree at home that was really infested with that. It may be worth looking at doing an application next spring on fruit trees. There is an apple spray that does include an insecticide and a fungicide and a dormant oil. There are some other things for the tar spot, and I know we do have some links that will be available for all of those.
We're going to do a follow-up post with a whole bunch of links, so any other information that you want to go over, it'll be easy to get at.
Because I think that there are a lot of resources for us to use locally, from the cooperative extension to the Cornell Diagnostic Plant Laboratory to the DEC. There's the Certified Arborist Program that's done that, the Certified Nursery and Landscape Profession.
I'm going to take this opportunity to plug the Cornell Extension. That's what I work for. So if you have questions, you can get in touch with us, the Onondaga office. You'll get me on the phone or over email, or maybe Christina, who's behind the camera, and we can answer a lot of your arboriculture or tree questions. So reach out to us if you have any kind of questions about fungus or pruning or anything like that.
All right, Dale, it's been great talking with you.
Wait, I have one more question.
You got another question?
I have one more question. So what if if I have like a pine tree or something, I know that's not a pine tree, but for the people out there, if we have a pine tree or like a spruce, what happens if like that starts dropping needles?
Okay. Right now you will see that, and that's a normal process.
I thought they weren't supposed to drop it at all.
The needle cycle only lasts a certain amount of years. It's usually between 3 and 5.
Yeah.
And there's some trees that show it more than others. White pine, because of its long, soft needle, really sticks out. And we do get a lot of those calls. What's going on? My tree's dying. That's just a normal needle drop. Arborvitae is the same way. That does fall. The Norway spruce, you will see if you look close, there are needles around the ground.
Right.
And as long as it's the inner needles, there's no issue with that.
So if it's the stuff on the tips of the branches, that's when you have a problem?
Then we want to look at that. Okay. And I mean, there are certain things, and down the road we could possibly get into another. Colorado blue spruce is being hit very hard with needle cast right now, and that one will be the outer branches or outer needles working in. But as long as you see it and look inside, and it's nothing more than that. As a housekeeping thing here, we actually run the leaf blower around lightly just to clean them up, because it does draw your eye to it.
Yeah. And you were talking about fungus, because you were saying the deciduous trees have funguses. Can needles be the same way?
I think if it was Colorado blue spruce that you're seeing, I would definitely consider getting those picked up. White pine or that, I don't see an issue with that. Austrian, that used to be a staple, has really gone out of favor because of Depodia twig blight. That one you may also want to be concerned with. And I guess there again, if there's ever where you have a question, ask.
Yeah, great. That's good information.
Yeah, the leaf blower is a great idea. On the evergreen needles, because those are hard to rake.
Yes.
The leaf blower, good idea.
But I know like with the white pine, some people like that as a mulch.
Yeah.
You go down in the southern states and they actually use the needles.
All right. And then I guess you kind of avoid the whole self-selection too, because of the needles acidifying the soil and all that stuff too. So that's another reason you want to scoop them up. All right. Do we have any other questions?
We have no more questions from our participants.
Do you feel like we covered everything about going into winter?
I think Kelly did fantastic. So we had great information, and I think it'd be helpful to do it. And we'll have some resources up on the site coming up soon. But thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the weather as it is. So we'll be in winter here soon.
Awesome.
All right, thank you.
Enjoy the warmth.
Thank you.